So we'll be able to share this with anybody who needs the recording or wants to share this with their friends and family after the event as well. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm so glad to welcome you here. I'm going to just do a quick screen share to go over a few slides before we get started and kick off the program with Sarita and Stefan, who have joined us here from Upper Manhattan Forest Kids. Okay, so let's play. Okay, so first things first, we just want to give a quick thank you to Con Edison. They have given us support to make this event possible. They've made our public programming virtual possible this summer. So thank you to Con Edison. And welcome to our third virtual event, Kids in the Outdoors. Before we get started, to share a little bit more about the NAC and what we do, we're the nonprofit partner to New York City Parks, and we work in the natural areas that exist in New York City's parklands. There's 10,000 acres of forests, wetlands, grasslands that exist, and the Natural Areas Conservancy is the nonprofit partner that works to conserve and restore and protect those lands and pieces of parkland. So we have a small but mighty staff of 18 ecologists, researchers, and scientists, and they all work together to improve access to local nature and improve the health of these forests and wetlands. A few signature programs that we have a CUNY internship program. We partner with local park conservancies through our conservancy engagement program to help advance their forest management work. We put out cutting edge research and resources. Many of you may have heard of the Forest Management Framework for New York City. That's the guiding document that the New York City Parks Department uses to kind of guide their forest management through the 10,000 acres that exist. And then more recently, we've expanded to national coalition building. So now we work with a lot of nonprofit and municipal partners across the country in major cities that have urban natural areas. So we are always adding new projects, initiatives, and we're trying to expand our reach. But tonight's event is a good example of our goal to improve access to nature and really expand our public programming and get New Yorkers just engaged with the local natural areas that can be found in their neighborhood. So if you want to learn more about what we do, please visit the naturalareasnyc.org website, and you can find more about our particular program, sign up for our email list, or even follow us on social media. Before we get too far along in the program, I just want to remind everybody, I'm sure nobody's forgotten, we are in the middle of COVID-19. So many of the fun things that Sarita and Stefan will be sharing with you guys in the next hour, just remember to keep up those social distancing guidelines and rules. So 6 feet between people, wearing a mask, being respectful of space and hygiene, washing your hands, all of that good stuff. And then always be sure to check the New York City Parks website before you visit a local park to check if bathrooms are open, parking, all of that good stuff that you might want to keep in mind before you go for a visit. And so lastly, I just wanted to introduce quickly our speakers. So we have Sarita and Stefan from Upper Manhattan Forest Kids. They are both just experts in outdoor learning and really creating memorable experiences for kids of all ages to engage with nature and the outdoors and learn about everything nature. And so we're super excited to have them with us tonight. Last year we held an in-person event with them. Now we've moved to virtual. And in the next hour or so, they'll be sharing some really fun activities for you to be able to replicate with your own children at home or during your next park visit. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will kick it over to Sarita and Stefan. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Tessa. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarita Covington, and I am the co-founder, along with Stefan Kammerer, of Upper Manhattan Forest Kids. And we're delighted to be here with you and as well with Natural Areas Conservancy and sharing some fun things to do out there in New York City's parks. So what we do, we lead outdoor classes based on the Danish forest kindergarten model in New York City's excellent green spaces. The beginning of our business and our journey somewhat started a generation ago when Stefan's parents chose to enroll their child in the local forest kindergarten in Denmark. In so doing, and they would never know it at the time, they began their connection with the amazing, lush and long legacy of Danish forest kindergartens and its relationship to their family and then our family. And now in New York City, we have adapted a lot of those inspiring tips and strategies and technologies in our quite different space of New York City. So while this is not Denmark, New York City has amazing green spaces, forests, and just excellent opportunities for young people to explore, just as they did in the Danish forest kindergartens. So we're going to talk about a few ways to engage as a family in New York City's green spaces. Who is this for? If you are here because you know a little bit about outdoor education, but maybe not too much, maybe you've been hearing about it lately, and you're just wondering, well, how does that work? How do you engage in an educational way with the outdoors? What does that look like? You're in the right place. We are going to give a little bit of some background around why and how to use the outdoors for your child's learning journey. And if you've already been out there with your family daily, across the street, in the parks, driving there, great. A lot of these things you may feel affirmed with. You may feel aligned in our vision, and we thank you for doing that with your family and using our nature that is available in the city. It makes an impact to raise children who will become stewards of the planet. So we thank you for doing that, and yay, we are siblings in this work. So there's a couple things that we want to just share as overall guidelines in terms of how to engage. We'll just say that there's a focus on activities for children 0 to 6 years old, so up to 6 years old. And there's also the possibility, with a little bit of creativity, a couple more challenges, these activities can be of use to older children, siblings, etc. So you can listen for that as well. Okay, great. So some overall guidelines. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And here we go. So some things we believe in as a foundation. We believe in child-led learning, and we believe in trusting children. So what does that look like as a parent? Well, the parent's job is to make sure that the playing space, the exploratory space, is safe. And so that may mean as you pick the space that your child is going to play in, explore in, just making sure that there's no trash on the ground. When we have class, we always have plastic gloves and trash bags so we can pick up things along the way, or when we're there, anything that we see, we just help out the Parks Department in that way. Also, broken branches overhead, thorns or poisonous plants, if you see poison ivy, etc. So you just want to check the space and make sure it's a safe space so that your child can kind of just freely explore on their own. The second point, as an overall thing to think about, is we believe in modeling. So young people will abide by what you say to a certain extent, and for the most part, they'll follow what you do. So your attitude and how you relate to the outdoors certainly impacts how your child will relate to the outdoors. So parenting is always an opportunity for self-reflection, and in this way, we hope you can think about what is your relationship with nature. If you're curious, your child will be curious, right? So, etc. The third thing that we recommend is thinking about, you may have heard this saying, it's a Scandinavian saying, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So all of that to say, weather prep, right? So making sure that you're thinking about how to prepare for the weather. It is summer in New York, so that seems quite natural to just go out and enjoy nature freely. But we participate, our classes are all year round. So wintertime, we're out there. In the rain, we're out there. And really the thing about it is just making sure that you are prepared. So right now it's summertime. You want to think about sun protection, staying hydrated, so bring enough water with you. And then in the winter, there would be about layers and other gear, right? So just thinking about how to prepare, the less that you are distracted by the weather or are annoyed by the temperature, the more fun you'll have. So just prepare for that, and you'll have fun in any kind of weather. And then, of course, diversity of space is a huge impact on a child's learning. So we're lucky enough to be in New York City, where there is such a great diversity in terms of landscape. So from forests to wetlands, to meadows and rocks to trees. And there's all of these varied ways that your child can really have a hands-on experience with nature. So we encourage you to vary your experience outdoors, right? Just don't go to one or two places. Where else can you go? Especially considering that we are still social distancing. So if the area that you normally go is crowded, that's okay. The Natural Areas Conservancy website has all of the green spaces throughout the city. Try a new place, or maybe go off the regular path, the pavement, and go exploring. There is no place that's off limits unless, you know, it's roped off, but there's no reason why you can't leave the path and find some new area of the park that you haven't explored yet. So those things are just to keep in the background as we talk about a few activities that you can do with your child. And for each activity, we'll say a little bit about whether it's appropriate for a wetland or forest or meadow. Also, the age appropriateness of the activity. So for the first activity, I'm going to pass it to my partner, Stefan, to talk about music and natural instruments.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Stefan, the other partner in the Upper Manhattan Forest Kids. So one of the really fun things that you can do being outside is making music with kids. It's a great way to connect with music and the natural areas. I'm a saxophone player by profession, so sometimes I've brought my saxophone to classes, and of course kids there are like fascinated by that. You can also see a picture of my niece in the background there playing guitar for some of the kids when she came to the States and visit us. So you can go to the next slide. So some of the things that you can do outside is like whistling with acorn tops and grass leaves. You can make acorn shakers on a string, like the one in the picture there. They're not very loud. You have to listen very closely, but they're fun to make and they look really pretty. You can play log drums and pretty much anything out in the open can be a drum, right? And then another thing that we like to do is make can shakers. So here, I think you have to expand the picture, Sarita. So here you see me working with a little friend of ours. His name is Dax, who was really fascinated with the sounds that he would get from hitting a log. So that's an example of a log drum. And like Sarita was mentioning before, we also modeled for the kids. So here it's me. I'm sitting here. I made a little drum set of different things that I found outside, and sometimes the kids they'll try to replicate that, or they'll make or they'll just sit down and listen to what it is that you're doing, and that's a really great to connect and to connect with the sounds that are available in the outdoors. So okay, great. So one of the things that I mentioned was to play on acorn tops. It takes a little practice, but it's fun to learn. So I have an acorn top on a string here, like this. They might be a little difficult to find now this time of summer because they might start rotting away. But if you find them, you can put your thumbs over here. You probably can't learn from what I'm doing right now, but it can get really loud. It's not so loud, but that's probably for the better in this situation. You can also play blades of grass. So if you have like the grasses that have blades on them, you can play those by putting them between two fingers and blowing between your fingers. So that's another instrument that you can make. We talked about like acorn top shakers on a stick. That's something that you can make with just some string, a stick, acorn tops, and something to drill a hole in the acorn top. Those have been really fun projects to do, to have all the kids like working on collecting the acorn tops and making them. And then part of our outdoor practice is always that we always start with a welcome song and we always start with a goodbye song. So I always bring my penny whistle. So that one is we always bring, but you might have other instruments that you play that you can bring out and sing songs outside. Another thing that we do is like the last thing I mentioned was can shakers. So it looks like it just looks like a can, right? And then you can play music with them, and you can put a bunch of different things that you can put in them. So, for example, we have acorns. I don't know if you can see them. I'll turn this so you can see the acorns that I have here. They just go into the can, and you can cut a little piece of cardboard as a lid and put it on top, and tape it with some kind of tape on top, and then you have a shaker. And these, like with the acorns, they sound a little more dull. Or you can make it with rocks. Same thing, same principle, and they can be really loud. So there's a bunch of other things that you can do for making instruments out in nature. So there's always something fun to do like that. I think that's what I had to say about instruments. What's next, Sarita?
So I'm going to share my screen again. So another great and somewhat simple way to add some fun to, I'm having issues switching my slide. One sec here. There you go. Another fun thing that you can do, and it's quite simple, is just doing art, bringing art to the outdoors. We really love making art with just natural materials. So we try not to bring a lot of added things to the outside. There's just, as we can see in this picture, there's just so many things outdoors that we can use instead of bringing paint and loads of paper and brushes and things like that. We like to think of the classroom being the outdoor world. So the classroom's materials are the things that are found out there. So for instance, here's a few things that we've done with community art activities. Making a mural is the picture on the right side. Just a old sheet, and that's your canvas, and then asking young people to collect things that they find beautiful and adding that. Also, a log that we found and using some chalk. Folks worked on this collectively as well and making that beautiful. So there's tons of things that you can make. One art piece that we made was just making faces out of natural materials. This is pretty old, and so this was just a leaf and a seed from the sweet gum tree and another seed. And all you need is really, really simply is some cardboard, some glue. And if you make the journey part of the project, like the journey of gathering and collecting beautiful things like leaves in a basket or pine cones, sticks, and then you get there and you just put them all together in their own way. So using folks' imaginations to create faces or animals. There's tons of things that you can do creatively. And some of it's abstract, as you could see in the previous pictures, just making whatever you want. And that's the same thought process behind constructing things, right? So we've also done the same thing with sculptures, making sculptures out of mud and rocks, and other things that we found outdoors, those sticks, as you saw. And then we've created a whole gallery at the end of it so that we can like tour all of the artwork and just enjoy each other's work. So that's, that can be any age group. And it's really great for young children 0 to 2. It's really great for fine motor, just being able to pick through grass and then glue it on things. It's really great exercise for that purpose. And then for older kids, we also love to do scavenger hunts. So here's one that we've made. We've made our own little sort of journal for it with just some cardboard and a rubber band and stick, and then putting the scavenger hunt on top of it. So you can make one your own. You can just Google scavenger hunts and look for different scavenger hunts that they have. This one we made of ourselves for the city. And then you can also make one with outdoor things, acorns. They can find as many acorns as they want, as many oak leaves or nests, pine cones. And that's for ages 3 and older. You can make them more complicated as well. So that's something you can adapt for the age group. And kids really enjoy taking their little notepad and going exploring. Yeah, it's fun for them to do independent and look at some of, this is our daughter and another child already out on their hunt. So that's a scavenger hunt as well. And that's best for forests, but also you can get creative. And like I said, we have a city scavenger hunt. You can do it in other areas as well. It's pretty flexible. And then in terms of wetlands, we were thinking fishing is a great way to engage with the outdoors as a family. I'm going to pass it to Stefan to share about that.
Great. So one of the things that's really fun to do with kids in the summertime is fishing. And our daughter and I have made many fishing trips this summer. So I'm just gonna let her make a quick report first. Oh, you have to bring it back. You bring yours.
Hello, this is Sunshine, reporting from fishing trip. Let's go on a fishing adventure and fish for whatever we can.
Okay, can you pause it for a second, Sarita? So many of New York City parks are home to beautiful lakes and ponds. Prospect Park and Central Park are some of the more well-known parks that have ponds. So we've been going to this lake in Van Cortlandt Park this summer a lot. And sometimes we've been here alone, so a fishing trip may also provide you with an opportunity to be outside without a mask if there's no one around, you know. So we've caught many different fish, but we also had an opportunity to see a lot of other wildlife, like these beautiful butterflies here. So for a fishing trip, what you'll need is a fishing rod, a reel, a fishing line, a bobber split shot, size 8 or 10 hook, and a fishing license. So for the fishing license, Google fishing license NYC, and then you can click on fishing licenses under the Department of Environmental Compensation site. And from there, the process is pretty straightforward. So that leads to a place where you can buy your sporting license online. And while you're at it, you should get the saltwater one for free. So of course you need worms too, and this might be something that's a job for mommy or daddy because you know, you want to make sure you don't have the kids get hooked on a fishing hook with barbs on it. Now, the really cool thing about this is that you can teach your kids and then ask them to teach you back.
I'm putting my first finger first.
Good.
And I'm gonna turn the brace after that, flip it over, and let it go.
Then wow, and then it's just time to wait for the first fish to bite, right? And the experience of catching that first fish is really fun.
Okay, you can pull it up. So what do you think about catching your first fish?
Fun!
Was it fun?
Yeah.
Nice. Are you ready to let it go again?
Whoa!
So there's a couple of things to remember. Freshwater fish caught in New York City parks are catch and release only. So they have to be put back in the lake or the pond, wherever you caught it. And then so you have to remember to wet your hands before you handle the fish so you don't damage their protective slime coat. A fish that has been handled with dry hands can develop fungus and other problems that might lead to the fish dying. And so it's important to protect our fish. Some areas where your child might actually really benefit from a fishing trip is cultural. Like, so in our case, I'm from Denmark, so it's a way for our daughter to connect back to her Danish ancestry, because in Denmark, you know, fishing is a huge part of the Danish culture. And it's like can offer like a generational connection, because in Sarita Sunshine's case, both of her grandfathers were amateur fishermen and loved it, and I loved fishing when I was a kid as well. So it's a really fun thing to connect around. And then there's a couple of other things like physical things and coordination skills. There's a lot of pieces that go into learning to cast a fishing line out, coordinating and remembering what to do. And even when you pull the fish back in, you have to coordinate where you put the stick so that you don't get stuck in the weeds, so to speak. So yeah, back to you, Sarita.
Yeah. So that's for ages usually 5 and older, but it's a lot of fun. Moving on to other activities, mud. Mud is a huge fun activity for kids. And if you have the space, so definitely meadows or anywhere, this is pretty flexible as well. The space and the clothing, because they will get muddy. Mud is so much fun. You can actually buy mud kitchens if you want to have them for your home, or like what we do, we like to reuse a lot of things that we have around the house, or old things, give things a second life. So this is just some wood that we use for a counter and some bowls and spoons and things. And hours later, they're making experiments and soups and medicine out of the things they found. Mud in a bowl, adding some things again that you may have found along the way. You may have gathered in your basket, berries and leaves and sticks, and just add water and mix. And again, it's great for creativity, fine motor as well. Let's see. Oh, climbing. So climbing is really great for gross motor, obviously, development. In New York, you can climb all of the rocks. These are pretty young children climbing this rock. And they're doing their best. You'll notice that the ages are 1 and older. You'll notice that no one is helping them. It's really important to try to avoid putting them in an area that's up high, like helping them climb up, because they're not able to actually tell what is safe. If they climb themselves, then they're actually connecting with what their body feels safe doing. And what we've learned is that kids won't go further than what they're actually comfortable with. They'll know when to stop. When they feel unsafe, they'll stop. It's usually when they're encouraged to go higher or farther, pushed or helped along, that they really don't have an idea of where they are in space. So this is a great way for them to exercise those muscle sets and that coordination, again, on a rock. We've also, we can see here that we are simply spotting, so that we're making sure that they're safe. But you know, this child on the left is very young, and she's climbing great. We've also found logs to balance on. We call them balance beams, and that's always fun to play with your balance, again, for coordination and that sort of physical development, which has obviously a connection to your cognitive development as well. So those challenges are always fun. You can make an entire obstacle course game out of it. So this is in the forest. Also in the forest, simply going for a walk can be extremely healthy and a really great activity for young children. There's a practice in Japan called forest bathing, and all ages participate in just going for walks, and their studies are about the sense of ease and the decrease in stress levels by simply walking among trees. Also, you'd be surprised how far children can walk. In urban areas like New York, sometimes kids are more used to strollers than walking. And in the forest, it just takes practice. I remember being in Denmark and observing a forest kindergarten there, and it was a cold day, it was rainy, it was in November in Denmark. And this group youngest was around 3 or 4, the oldest was around 5 or 6. And we walked for a long time. I was getting tired and asking the leader, aren't we there yet? Shouldn't we stop at this point? When are we going to stop and sit down for a moment? And they were fine. And that just was really important for me to experience how I might put a limitation on a child before actually allowing them to experience how far they're willing to go. And it just takes practice. With more use, you go farther. So that's all ages. Then of course, we may be familiar with learning centers in indoor classrooms, but one way to have the experience of autonomy for young children especially is to put several items out all over your space. So we'll have maybe a chalk station out with some natural materials again, or water station, just a bowl or some cups with water to play with, and we may couple that with a mud playing area. But having different places to experiment and to choose how you want to play and explore. It's great for sensory development as well, especially for the younger ages, 0 to 2. You can just put several things on a blanket and see what they choose to explore at the time. And I will also say, don't be extremely tied to what the activity should look like. The chalk will end up in the water, the bowl will end up upside down, and it'll be a drum. And all of this is just the experience for the child. So that's a lot of fun to just let them go with that. And then of course, for older children, if you're thinking about how can I incorporate some of our more academic preparatory skills like reading or writing, arithmetic, and STEM as well. So there's many ways to do it. Reading outdoors can be great. And then you have the ease of being able to be in nature and listening and allowing your imagination to go with the story. We do lots of writing. For older kids, we do sharing stories where we share the story. We go around and we tell the story, writing it down together and incorporating, well, who's in the character, looking around. Oh, there's a squirrel there. There's a squirrel in the story. Oh, there's a robin. There's a robin in the story. So there's lots of stimulating things in your surroundings to add into the story. So that's a lot of fun for older kids. And then math and things, there's so many ways to incorporate math. We've measured things, we've measured trees, we've measured just anything that we find, bringing string to compare. There's all kinds of math games that you can make in terms of geometry as well. One thing that we like in terms of creating a counting game that's also a form of meditation. Sometimes if we're in a wetland space near a pond or some other body of water, we will gather and just toss stones or acorns into the water and count them. You can count them in tens, groups of tens if they're older, or just counting as high as you can go. It's very relaxing. I've sat at the edge of the water with a child just throwing things in, throwing things in together for quite a long time. And you'd think they'd get bored, and they were absolutely just engaged with watching the water ripple, with gathering and feeling the texture of the pebble. It's very, again, another sensory experience for young people. And science, we've done tons of science. I think that's makes sense. We've done tons of science outdoors. So now it's summertime, so there's lots of science experiments that you can do with the sun. reflecting the sun's rays. There's just, the sky's the limit. And that's a lot of great activities that you feel like, okay, we're actually learning, we're actually incorporating some things that perhaps you get in your school, and we're outdoors, so they're also getting all of those natural benefits. I want to speak a little bit about those natural benefits that you may not know that you receive being outdoors. Playing with soil and a lot of these natural elements are really great, especially early in a child's life for building up a strong immune system. There's plenty of stories around kids who grow up on farms and how they have very strong immune systems. So touching dirt early in their life is really great. It's very healthy. And then of course, being in fresh air is very important. We live in a city, and we live in different areas of the city, and depending on where you live, the quality of air tends to vary. So going out, being out in your local green space, in your local park, is a huge way. Being among trees makes such a difference to a child's early development of their body and their health. So and then of course, being in an expansive space is very helpful. We talked about the peace you get when you're walking amongst trees, but it's also very good. There's been studies around children who suffer from attention deficit disorder and things of that nature. And there's a calm that comes over you when you're outdoors. So sometimes it's easier to concentrate. Folks may think, oh, with all of these distractions, how can I focus? Sometimes it's actually easier to concentrate. So try it out for yourself, and read some of the studies about the health benefits. I also want to go back quickly to talk about climbing and the notion of risky play. So risky play, you may have heard about it or may not have, is the idea that there's inherently any risk in play, and to not be afraid of it, but to actually thinking about including it more intentionally. So with a level of risk in play, there's something that happens in terms of being able to grow through it, right? So something you haven't done before, it seems risky, right? That experience of overcoming something, of climbing that first rock, of struggling through something is what actually are the things that you remember. If you think back to when you were a child, a lot of those things where you can remember being afraid of something at one point and then overcoming it. These are the things that you hold on to and make great memories in terms of how you learn and how you know yourself. Doing risky play increases confidence in a lot of ways. So again, as we shared in the beginning, making sure the space is safe. However, trust your children. Allow them to struggle through something. You don't always have to save them or go to the rescue. The other thing that you may have to sort of deal with yourself about is a child's boredom, not being interested at first. Again, modeling is something that can help with that. But really allow your child to be uncomfortable. It can be a moment of great growth. So we really do encourage you to find out more about risky play and what that may look like in terms of your child's experience in the outdoors, and of course, risky play in a safe way. So I think at this point, we're going to move on to whatever questions you may have about the presentation at this point. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll see.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That was so great. I feel like I've learned so much in just, the 40 minutes that you guys presented. So, and I'm sure our attendees are feeling the same way. We've got a couple of great questions so far. So just a reminder to everybody that is watching, if you have any questions, now's the time to submit them through the chat, and we will take them and answer them. So, first is from Eric, and he's wondering if you could share your thoughts on teaching conservation and or being respectful of natural resources through the process of enjoying the parks, especially for toddlers who are pre-verbal.
Yeah, absolutely. So two things, and I also want to speak about children who are verbal. So we really believe in inquiry-based learning. So what that means is questions come up, right? Naturally, children have questions. And so rather than providing answers, we prefer to allow an exploratory conversation to arise. And also I want to say, there are innate things that that children know and experience emotionally, like that emotional intelligence is very important and to not be overlooked. So even if they're not verbal, there are definitely certain things that they understand. And again, modeling. What you model at home, what you model outdoors, how you relate to picking up trash, that really simple act will offer an example of like, oh, this is what we do. We don't toss trash, we don't litter. As a matter of fact, we know that the collective well-being of our outdoors is our responsibility, so we pick up the trash. Doing things like that. So modeling is a really great way to just begin that conversation with pre-verbal children. In whatever capacity, however you use water. And the same thing for indoors and outdoors. You wanna see if you can be consistent in that behavior and how you relate to water indoors and outdoors. Do you wanna add anything, Stefan?
No, I mean, you pretty much touched on all the things that that came to mind for me. I mean, the only thing that I would say about that I've noticed since going back to fishing with Sunshine is that I can tell that there's a connection now with nature and food in a way that she didn't have before. So she's catching fish. We don't eat those fish, but she knows it's a fish. So there's a connection that she now has, that a fish is just not something that you just go and get at a supermarket. It comes from somewhere. So all these things that you can do that actually, like with all of our food sources, whatever you can do that connects that back to the planet and why we should conserve our planet are, I mean, there's millions of different ways that could be doing, but it was one thing that I've noticed recently with her and fish.
And one more thing before we move on to the next question, because that made me think about what we didn't add is having farming activities, planting activities.
Yes.
We do a lot of planting seeds with students and our child. So talking about growing food and how that occurs and how you can be responsible for that, talking to a plant such that it does grow, how it grows, what sort of things that it needs to grow, et cetera. Those are really great ways to think about the planet that they live on.
And then one last thing is the books that we pick to read in the environment that we are in almost always talk about the environment that we're in. So we pick books that talk about conservancy or relationship with nature, and then we connect that with the environment that we're in. So even if it's the child is not verbal yet, we will read a story or show pictures, and then we'll start looking in the environment and see how that connects.
And you can see on our website, we have some books that we use available.
That's perfect. That was actually my question for you guys, is what books do you recommend? So you answered my question before I even asked it. That's amazing. Okay, great. So I'll keep going. We've got a few more questions that have come in. So Judith is asking, when you set up water and mud stations, do you bring the water or do you collect the water from the area depending on the site?
Yeah, I would say depending on the site, but for the most part, we bring our water and we just bring the amount that we're going to use. So when that water is done, that's it. And it's just, you know, a way for us to measure how much we're using and being responsible for that. But that's something that we've done. But sure, you could use, you know, there's water fountains all over. I don't know if you want to, you know, wait online for water, but we just say bring it with you and then use that amount.
Great. So one more question. So it's from Hunter. He says, what's your favorite park to take children in nature? And more importantly, which is Sunshine's favorite place to visit?
I would say Sunshine's favorite place is definitely the North Woods in Central Park. Yeah. But other really great parks to go to are, I mean, the ones that we're the most familiar with are Inwood Hill Park, mm-hmm. and then obviously Van Cortlandt Park. Van Cortlandt Park is so big that there are so many areas that are very wooded, and it doesn't have a lot of poison ivy. That's the thing that you have to watch out for in Inwood Hill Park. There is a lot of poison ivy out there. But even that is always an opportunity to teach the kids, and I think it goes back to the same thing that Sarita was mentioning before, that we talk to even the nonverbal kids about poison ivy. This is what it looks like, and so that it doesn't come from our assumption about how much or how little they understand, but we just give them what it is, and then they get what they get. And we definitely can see that over time that as the kids, they grow older and they're in this environment, they start being responsible for what it is that they see, and they're like, oh, stop, I see poison ivy, and they start like leading smaller kids and us adults as well. So I think with everything that there is to see out in the environment like that is worth talking about.
I remember when Sunshine was 3 and I was holding a plant and I was like, what is this called? And I just couldn't remember the name of it. And then she all of a sudden says, oh, that's mugwort. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. I mean, they can identify plants at a surprisingly young age. Yeah.
That's amazing. We'll have to let our ecologists know. Sunshine might be invited to go on some, site visits in the future.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's great. Well, I think those are all of our questions. Is there anything else you guys want to kind of leave us with, or kind of wrap it up? I think those are some really great questions from our participants, and you guys have shared so many great, helpful tips and ideas to enjoy nature outside next time you visit a park or natural area. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I thought there was another question up here before, but I guess maybe it was withdrawn. Anyway, I don't remember what it was.
Thank you all for coming, and please do get outdoors. Use these amazing resources that we are lucky enough to have around us. Access the Natural Areas website to find your nearest green space. It's broken down really clear what kind of green space it is and what's available there. And yeah, try something new. Do some reading about outdoor education and try something out. It's great to experiment.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And I'll note we have on our website, the naturalareasnyc.org website, we have a tab called the NYC Nature Map. So it's an interactive map in that you can filter by district or borough and find the local natural areas if you want to search wetlands or forests. And then you can also learn about the work that's going on in those parks to maintain and restore them. But it's a good resource just to consult if you're looking for a new place to visit, or if you wanted to check out a new borough that you've never been to before. So definitely it's a good place to start. And then obviously, bring all of these fun activities with you, with your kids, and just enjoy the resource this summer and into the fall. So, all right. Well, thank you guys both again. This was really great. And I hope you have a great evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tessa.
Bye.
Thanks to Natural Areas Conservancy.